Hey, Smack 'em God, look who we have back on the channel, Mr. Martin Popoff. Hi, Martin.
Yeah, how you doing, Ralph? Very cool.
Great, and
Thanks for
great.
having me.
Hey, thanks for being here. And I understand this is your favorite Judas Priest album.
Absolutely, definitely. Yep,
And why would it be your favorite?
there we go. Wow. So, why would it be my favorite? So, I've often said that I don't think there's any greater run of genius in rock and roll, like just objective genius in rock and roll, than Queen in the '70s and Priest in the '70s. And they both happen to be pretty hard rock and heavy metal, but that doesn't matter. I mean, I'm including everybody on that. So basically, I think the previous three albums, excluding Rock and Rolla, so the previous three albums are increasingly academic and scientific and really scholarly and really pushing heavy metal forward, which is great. Love them to death. But this record here, I think I call it a cusp album. It's one of these albums that's the meshing of two good ideas for a band, and magic can ensue when that happens. And I really think that this has the perfect blend of the fast, interesting, scholarly, scientific metal of Sin After Sin and Stained Class with better songwriting, a little more aggression in Rob Halford. I always say that that's my favorite picture of Rob Halford ever. He looks like a drunken pirate. Yeah, I just think he doesn't really look like him, but it's a really cool shot of him. I just always like that. I just love that whole live thing, anyways. And the other thing, I wanted to show this as well. So in high school, in shirt making class,
Oh, wow.
made a screen printing of my own Priest shirt. Put it on yellow. I don't know why I put it on yellow, but so the magic of this album, first off, some of the magic comes from that in our friend group. The first copy to arrive in our little town of Trail, BC, that anybody got was the UK version. It was the Killing Machine version with
Yeah.
slightly different coloring up in the corner.
And no Green Manalishi on that one, right?
That's right. The big difference is that which blew us away when it arrived. You get it, and it has a totally an extra track on it, and it's Fleetwood Mac, but that's neither here nor there. It sounds like a total metal song, the way they do it. But yeah, so we lived with this album for however long it was, a month or two, because it came out in October of 1978. And I swear, this is the greatest pair of albums that ever came out in the same year. With this in October '78, and Stained Class February 10th of '78, which happens to be the same day Van Halen came out. But so we lived with it as an import, which is kind of cool. It's always cool to have an import sort of thing. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could go through the tracks or whatever, but I just feel like I'll just be talking the whole time. Even ask me whatever you want.
Well, I would like to say, and I absolutely love this album.
Yeah.
My favorite would be the one you discovered, because I keep notes of you. I watched some of your shows, and you discovered them on Sad Wings,
Yep.
and you thought it was like hey, this may be a Christian album, right?
Yep.
And well, that Sin After Sin and Stained Class, they're all kind of proggy. Would you say like a little more busy? Where this one's a little more simplified. Like they went even further on British Steel, but this one seems a little more simplified, where they didn't have songs like Sinner and Beyond the Realms of Death, like these long epic. This is more, just more condensed. Wouldn't you
Yes.
agree?
Yeah, and to go back to Sad Wings, yeah, when we got that album, you would sit and make your lists of top whatevers, and Priest was instantly the greatest band. I've often said this, that really nothing of massive consequence, tons of great albums, but nothing of massive consequence happened between that first clump of four albums that kind of invent heavy metal proper in 1970, all the way up to Sad Wings of Destiny in '76. So I think that was like a massive improvement in heavy metal quality right there. And then it just got better. And most of the heavy lifting is done by Judas Priest. But so, yeah, when you get to this record, I just find it's a little bit of like the way I love so much Metal Gods and Grinder on British Steel. It's like, to me, those songs are an even greater revelation of greatness, but the whole rest of the album is a big step down from this album. Because those two songs, you just feel the immediacy of the great songwriting, and they're still, uncompromisingly heavy metal. On here, it's a little bit of that. It's just got a tiny bit of the Ole John Roth Scorpions. It's almost like a cross between Love Drive and Taken by Force here. But essentially, love. In my top Priest songs of all time, I have no problem including the likes of Delivering the Goods, Running Wild. I would say Hellbent for Leather would be up there. Rock Forever would be up there, and Burning Up. So my top 10 could easily include those on any given day. Delivering the Goods is just, that's the thing. They still have the complicated riffing and stuff, but the recording's beefier, so that's a good thing about it. It doesn't have that sort of really toppy, precise sound that certainly Sin After Sin and Stained Class had. So you get the first. Well, Sad Wings was a really good, well-rounded recording, but I think this is an even better recording, and it's very. It sounds like a Martin Birch recording, but more like a Cultosaurus erectus Martin Birch recording. Yeah, love. Delivering the Goods just gives you the complicated riff and the heaviness and the growlingness and just this really deep grinding groove. Rock Forever, again, it just has that sort of when we as kids used to think, wow, Scorpions are so smart, they're from Germany, that must be why. Like, what's the reason they're not from the UK or America? I mean, something's making those guys really smart. And Priest had always felt that way too, that they were just like a notch above in terms of like heavy metal intelligence sort of thing. And Hellbent for Leather is amazing. Evening Star, I could take it or leave it. Take on the World is a good atmospheric sort of thing. But yeah, side 2, Burning Up, famously considered their disco song. I think it's just beautifully put together. Great groove on that. Green Manalishi, so heavy. And again, as you say, when we got that, to get that on that was really cool. I really love how Killing Machine and Evil Fantasies, they're not afraid to go slow and play something slow and a little more kind of leaden and atmospheric, like Slow Sabbath. Before the Dawn, throwaway ballad, but Running Wild, again, just an amazing, that feels like a British Steel type, elevated writing sort of song. So yeah, I just think everything comes together on this one, and it's just the perfect collection. It's beautifully sequenced, lots of variety. But like you say, I suppose it feels a little bit like this isn't a band that had a lot of super long songs or anything like that, but I know what you mean. They crammed a lot of stuff into a lot of those older ones. It was, like I say, they were really scholarly, especially on Sin After Sin. And this, yeah, everything's just perfect on this. This is a little bit more of a beer drinking album. So
yeah, I've noticed too, like looking over the track list, not including the bonus tracks, Running Wild is the only one that's featured on Unleashed in the East. And it does sound better, I feel, on Unleashed in the East, but I don't think the bonus tracks that they use, like the bonus tracks on there are Rock Forever, Delivering the Goods, Hellbent for Leather, and I think that's it. I don't think they're great recordings, but I think this album captured those songs better than the Unleashed in the East versions.
Yeah.
Do you agree on that?
Yeah, I just think this is a perfect combination of absolute precision and beautiful thought put into it. It's produced by James Guthrie, right? And like I say, that just a little bit of sleaziness and growl and just a little bit of looseness and groove. Big credit to Les Binks, of course, here. Les is on Stained Class, Unleashed, and Hellbent for Leather / Killing Machine, right? And there's some really nice little kind of recording things going on. Hellbent for Leather is a pretty complicated song. It gets a speed metal, but it's pretty tricky. It's got some great parts. But yeah, I have no qualms at all with the production. I think it's just a really pristine production. But it brings us the bottom end, which is kind of important. That was missing on the last 2 albums.
So you had Hellbent for Leather before Unleashed came out, right?
Yeah, because it is before Unleashed, right? Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. Yeah. So definitely I had them all in succession. One of my fondest memories as a record buyer was somewheres around Sin After Sin, having Sin After Sin maybe, reading one of those little stapled together record, record order, mail order, stoner mail order things, right? And spotting in there Rock-a-Rolla. What the heck is that, right? Like just being blown away, like on Gull or whatever it was, and I ordered it immediately. I still remember to this day it was $7.99 plus postage, and I was just counting the days for that thing to arrive. I was dying to hear there's something from I'm not even sure if I knew it was before Sad Wings at that point. I just knew there was another one that we didn't have, and then it arrived, and I definitely don't think. See, here's the thing. I really don't think Priest, people say, oh, it's a bluesy album and Sad Wings is a metal classic, right? I literally think it's the same kind of music as Sad Wings. It's just like the lesser group of songs, and it's recorded really well for 1974. It sounds great. I mean, I have no problems with recording. The Priest guys just disown it. They hate the sound of it, but I think it's got top end, bottom end, maybe a little lacking on top end, but it's just basically a full-bodied, expensive sounding record. And to me, it just sounds like not even the demo versions of Sad Wings. I've said that before, but to me, it just sounds like a slightly lesser bank of songs that's really essentially trying to do the same kind of thing. I have no problems with Rock-a-Roll. I think it's a pretty good album.
Okay, so when you first got Rock-a-Rolla, you weren't like taken back even a little bit by, oh, this is not like Sad Wings. Did you have already Sin After Sin and Stained Class before you got Rock-a-Rolla?
That's the thing. I think I'm probably not Stained Class. This was probably around the Sin After Sin time, so I'm not sure I had that. But Rock-a-Rolla was a great hard rock metal song for that era. We're talking sitting there as a kid in 1977, right? There wasn't that much out there. Cheater, Never Satisfied, sounded like Sad Wings songs, especially Cheater. I mean, it sounds like a Sad Wings song. Yeah, there was some mellow stuff on there and some proggier, longer things. I was disappointed, obviously. It was not, but it was still probably top 1/3 of all hard rock heavy metal albums at that time, because there really wasn't much out there in the world. It's we put it down, but it's certainly heavier than every single Kiss album that was ever made in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
It's as heavy pretty much as a Ted Nugent or an Aerosmith album. It's heavier than every Blue Oyster Cult album. So it's still pretty heavy for its time.
Yeah, no, I actually love Rock-a-Rolla. I think it's an amazing album. But I feel that on Sad, because Rock-a-Rolla, Sad Wings did have some Al Atkins, like Victim of Changes, though I think it was reworked. I could be wrong. Did Rob Halford have anything to do with Victim of Changes? Did he change any of that up? I believe he did.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely reworked, and that one he gets the credit on. But I mean, put it this way: every single song on Sad Wings, putting aside whatever you want to talk about the ballads or whatever, but every single song on Sad Wings is better than every single song on Rock-a-Rolla. But it's so amazing an album that Rock-a-Rolla is still a good album. But yeah, it's incredibly. The riffs are really like super advanced. Like you compare it, forget Led Zeppelin, right? Forget comparing it to even Physical Graffiti, which is an amazing album, or certainly Presence, but even compare it to Rainbow Rising, which gets all this. You play it against Rainbow Rising, and Rainbow Rising sounds like 5 years older than it. It sounds so futuristic and well done. It's like they're ticking off the boxes of, okay, let's be the absolute best when it comes to vocals. Let's be the absolute best when it comes to riffs. Let's be the absolute best when it comes to performances, guitar solos. And they ticked off all these boxes, and yep, we're the best.
Did you think the production was a little better on Hellbent than the previous ones?
Definitely. And I would say Sad Wings, Sad Wings has a a full range production, I think better than even Sin After Sin and Stained Class. Those are radical productions. They're the way more younger people than us talk about And Justice for All in a way, right? They're very thin. You've got Simon Phillips on Sin After Sin, which adds a real jazziness to it, and somehow I don't know if Roger was channeling the personality of a 18-year-old Simon Phillips or whatever, but he basically somehow between the two of them and the Priest guys, they turned in like almost like a fusion album, a fusion jazz album. It's like sometimes I even say that, that you think back to, like, there's nothing like Rush in the world, right, in the 70s. But you could take little bits of Uriah Heep and you could take Sin After Sin and say, yeah, it's kind of Rush-like. It's kind of progressive metal, right?
Yeah. And when they toured on Sin After Sin, was Les Binks in the band by that time? Because I know Simon Phillips did not tour with them.
Yeah, so I guess how did that work? Maybe there wasn't much touring for Sin After Sin. Maybe it was right back into to making the next record, something like that. But Les Binks comes on pretty soon after.
Yeah, I really like Before the Dawn, Martin. I'm disappointed you're not a fan of that one. I'm kidding. Hey, everybody has their own opinion. But yeah, the thing is too that another myth that I've learned about Hellbent for Leather, if you look at some of the early footage before Rob was on the leather getup, KK was wearing like leather and black before Rob was, but Rob gets the credit for it. I think KK, and I believe KK even brought it up in his book, that he was the one that came up with the leather look. And Rob just got the credit for it.
Yeah, there's various stories about that. I did this thing, right? This big Judas Priest visual biography thing. And I was just flipping through it before going on with you. But I mean, we could almost kind of get the proof of this, because this whole book there's 400 pictures in this book, plus a detailed timeline. But here we are. Okay, that's 1980. If we go back a little earlier, well, yeah, these are these great Rich Galbraith photos. I love these photos. Like this is there's Glenn in like a ripped t-shirt, ripped shirt, and there's Rob looking like Ian Curtis from Joy Division, almost, right? But no, and then here's 79. So here's Rob with the kind of longish hair and a little bit of eye makeup, right? And his hair's looking kind of a little almost like ginger there a little bit. And he's kind of in a black tank top at that point. So and there's that great ad. Yeah, here's some great ones. Again, this is all Rich Galbraith. I love this. This is Rob in like a cowboy jeans sort of shirt, right? Maybe he's channeling a little bit of the old Les Binks there, right? They said Les Binks kind of had that fashion sense, right? But no, there's Glenn. There's a color one of Glenn in that like, here he's in kind of a red jumpsuit. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, they were fooling around with the fashion. This is like toning it down from the it wasn't even a glam thing they were doing really, but it's toning it down from the floppy hats and the satins and stuff and trying to come up with something. But I see Rob's got a bullet belt on, at this point. But yeah, these are just great pictures from that era. And remember, he had the machine gun too. Remember, he had as a prop, he had a machine gun that he'd run around on stage. And yeah.
Did you ever see them back in that time?
No, the first time I saw them, because I was from a small town in BC, and it was kind of a pain to see concerts. You'd either go to Spokane, which is over the border, different country, into the States, which was 2.5 hours away, or you went to Vancouver. So I didn't see a lot of concerts as a kid, but the first time I saw Priest was relatively early. So 82, I saw them on Screaming for Vengeance tour.
That's
and that would have been, I'm pretty sure. I get sometimes these support acts mixed up, but I'm pretty sure that was Coney Hatch supporting them. So a great Canadian band.
I love them. Devil's Deck. The first was amazing.
Excellent. Yeah.
And in retrospect, now looking back on this album, like Take on the World, would you say is kind of like United Part 1?
Yeah, but I think it's a better version because United has that sort of sing-songy chorus that's a little bit irritating. Take on the World, Take on the World is almost a little bit like We Will Rock You Part 2 as well, right?
Right.
But it's got that really cool drum idea to it. It's got some guitar. Later they do a song called Heavy Metal, which is even a worse version of this sort of thing, right? But yeah, this is we were as kids, we were actually pretty ticked off at Priest when British Steel came out. We loved that there was a new Priest album, but I remember Living After Midnight was an advanced single, and we were like horrified with that, with the Louie Louie chords in the chorus, right? Had a heavy verse, but the chorus wasn't heavy at all, right? It was like a totally new thing for Priest to be doing that, right? And then just in general, I think of like Steeler and Rapid Fire, not great riffs, they're just kind of dull, right? But as I said earlier, I feel like the spirit of what makes Hellbent for Leather so successful is in Metal Gods and Grinder. Like those are just two amazingly, enormously great, so catchy, like heavy metal intravenous quality, great songwriting, and that's the kind of thing. Like those songs, frankly, I think are even an evolution from Hellbent for Leather. But I think there's just something that everything is just so cool about this album, including that great album cover, right? That's classy.
Yeah.
Right? So and they're all classy, right? Here's my stained glass. This out for this too, of course, and this, I remember seeing this in the racks for the first time, and I just almost passed out. I was just flipping through the record racks, right? Because you get the shock of looking at that new logo for the first time and going, what does that say? I think I know what that says, and I just freaked out, right? Wow, that says Judas Priest. I can't believe this is a new Priest album, right? It's a little bit like I remember, I think it was the same store, and this is what I'm thinking of, why I'm thinking of, but it's the exact same effect I had seeing Sabotage Power of the Night with the new logo, right? Flipping through the racks. Is that a new Sabotage album? Like, wow, right? And that's an amazing album. That to me, that's a very similar album to Hellbent for Leather. I think that's where they got it absolutely perfect. But yeah, seeing this and then I mean, it quickly took it home. Obviously, it's a Judas Priest album, but doesn't that look like a disco album, right?
Yeah, it does.
So much like a disco album.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Did you notice the beginning of Burning Up has the same beginning of Unleashed in the East, the way Unleashed in the East starts? It has that same build up that
What song do you mean? You mean
Exciter? I mean, Burning Up on here.
Yeah.
Before the song kicks in, that little noise. That's the same noise on Unleashed in the East before Exciter comes on.
Oh, is it? I know I haven't played Unleashed for a little while, but yeah. Well, I guess probably it's they're just literally lifting it from the album or whatever, or inspired by it, if that's the case.
Yeah, I think because Burning Up, I don't know if that was ever played live, but I know they used that build up on Unleashed in the East. Now, Hellbent for Leather is a funny one because believe it or not, I did not own this album till like '83. And the first time I ever heard Hellbent for Leather was on the Screaming for Vengeance tour when they did it during the encore. And, automatically I knew, Hellbent for Leather. I know they have an album called Hellbent for Leather. But, yeah, that should have been a single. Well, do you know what the single was for this? Did it?
Yeah, I think it was Evening Star.
Oh, okay.
I think Before the Dawn was even a single of some sort, right? Rock Forever, I think, was some sort of a single, depending on what territory. Those ones come to mind for me. But I mean, I'm thinking in my head, like, so much genius on this album. Think of the way Delivering the Good starts, right? Kind of just ambles into view, there's just so much brilliance on this. I just, like I say, I mean, I kind of consider it, I always, and because it's sort of the same time frame, it just always had that extra level of cool that you got from Uli era Scorpions versus when they slowly start to become, Americanized, right? In the Matthias Jabs era. But so yeah, it's just everything about this just seemed like it had so much confidence that they knew what they were doing and they were enjoying themselves. It's just it loses that lecture hall sort of feel of the last two albums.
Was did you say earlier this was released the same year as Stained Class? No.
Well, yes. So Stained Class is issued
yeah.
February of 1978. And this is issued in the UK as Killing Machine in October of 78. And then just into 79, that's when North America gets it as Hellbent for Leather.
And well, Canada didn't get Killing Machine either, right? You guys.
No, we got it as this as well. This is my copy that I bought as a kid. It's a Canadian copy. This is what I got, after.
You had the band autograph that?
This one I have. I think this is KK, Rob, and Ian on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, down in the.
Nice. Well, it is a classic, and yeah, thank you for joining me to talk about this. It's anything else you'd like to say about this album?
Well, Ralph, it's funny when you say this is a classic. It's like not a lot of Priest fans are going to pick this as their favorite album, right? They're going to pick Sad Wings, they're going to pick British Steel, they're going to pick Screamin'. They pick Stained Class. This, for some reason, they don't really pick this one a lot, and I've always been amazed at that. It's just been my favorite forever. I don't know.
Yeah, I've always been a 70s Priest guy. I love the 80s stuff, but the 70s Priest is and I include this on it. I mean, my favorite used to be Stained Class, but now it's Sad Wings. But I'd still put this above anything in the 80s.
Yeah.
I consider it a classic.
Yeah. Cool.
I mean, I would say probably Rock-a-Rolla. I would put a couple 80s above that one, but not anything from Stained Class all the way up to, well, Unleashed is my all-time favorite, but that may be Timeline because that's when I discovered Judas Priest was on Unleashed in the East. So, that's why I consider that one like the best one. And yeah, maybe because I heard Running Wild first. Let me ask you this. You heard Running Wild first on Hellbent. Do you think it's the best version over the Unleashed in the East version?
Yeah, because I just have a low opinion or low need for live albums at all. I mean, I just don't care. And I think this sounds perfectly fine. I love the tightness and the absolute, like, there's just, it's just so absolutely locked down. And another band I think about in this kind of feel is and that one I always thought, I think of Accept all the time, right? I think of that first Accept album, which we call Chick with Chainsaw. Second one's really crappy, but Breaker is basically kind of on this level of greatness for 1981. And I think of Metal Heart. So yeah, there's a coolness factor to Accept as well that I feel in here. But yeah, for some reason, every time I think of Running Wild, I think of Accept.
Right on. Yeah. To me, Unleashed in the East is a live album, but it doesn't really sound live to me. I mean, there is a lot of controversy that it's not a live album, and according to Rob Halford, it is a live album, except he redid the vocals because he had the flu in Japan at the time. And his vocals weren't good, and he did it all in one take at John Lennon's house or Ringo Starr's house where they did British Steel. So I don't know. I think that album it sounds very studio to me, like a studio work with live, cheering, thrown in.
I think the big benefit of that, number one, it's one of the greatest live albums of all time, and it's really cool that they made it a single album. But I think the big thing about it is it's got a little bit of that Kiss Alive thing in that it delivers the Sad Wings songs in a new super power packed version, kind of the way Kiss Alive delivered songs from the first three Kiss albums that way, right? So that's one of the great things about it. It's relentlessly super heavy album. If we were, it's funny. It's almost like if we were to be allowed to include live albums in trying to figure out what the heaviest albums are of the 70s. Unleashed in the East might be the heaviest album ever made in the 1970s.
Right? Oh yeah, no, without a doubt, the most metallic. And it's dominated by Sad Wings songs, and I think the reason for that was because of the original record company, Gull Records, won't give up the rights to those albums to Priest. So they re-recorded 4. Is it 4? It's Victim of Changes, Ripper, Tyrant, and Genocide. I mean, that's almost half that album, you know?
That's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they did that because you know, the record company just wouldn't. And I do think, you know, maybe it's Timeline, but those to me are the definitive versions, you know, because that album is just, to me, phenomenal. It's, you know, if you were to ask me my favorite Priest album, it would be that. But you know, if I had to pick a studio one, it would be Sad Wings.
Mm-hmm.
But and then Les Binks, who's a phenomenal drummer on these 2 albums, and he played on Unleashed, was out, and they brought in Dave Holland, who's more simplified, but I thought he was a good drummer. He was good for that era of Priest, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, who can we blame on Priest turning into Kiss? Kind of. I think that's kind of the way we felt when British Steel came out. We were pretty disappointed, and then Point of Entry, same thing, even worse, and then Screamin', a slight return, but still, you know, there's a lot of Screamin' for Vengeance that sounds like a hair metal album, really, and people forget that. You know, people forget that's got Chains and you got another thing coming, and what is that other one called?
Fever.
Devil Child, Fever. You know, that's half the album is pretty hair metal-y, right? I mean, it's 1982. It's way before hair metal, but basically, I don't know if I'd say he was a good drummer for what they did, because I can't think of too much drumming on those albums that I even like at all. And part of that fault goes to Tom Allen as well, who recorded them so badly and using kind of 80s tropes, right? So you got that going on top of what he did. Now, oh man, this gets kind of deep, but can we blame Dave Holland for dragging Priest down into that direction because of it? Supposed limitations. I don't think he had those limitations. I'm sure if you said, Dave, play busy, he could do it, right? So I don't think he actually had those limitations, but it's like I think it's the band telling him not to do anything fancy, and Tom Allen telling him not to do anything fancy, and the label telling him that, and everybody saying we got to eat, we're starving here, you know, we're not making any money. So there's a lot of reasons, but no, I don't know. Saying he was good for what they did is like, well, maybe it's his fault they were like that. I don't know. But for what they did, even for what they did, I would have liked a little more interest coming from the drum end of things if it was allowed. But like I say, maybe it wasn't allowed.
Well, yeah. Well, his drumming in Trapeze was different. It wasn't as like simplified as the Priest stuff.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Hellbent for Leather, and a happy 45th anniversary to this and Stained Class, which is coming up fairly soon here while we're recording this. I'm sure I'll have this up before February 10th. So, Martin, thank you so much for being part of this, and you will join me again to talk about Ram Jam, right?
Sure, absolutely. Let's do it.
Yeah, all right. So thanks again, Martin, and stay tuned for our Ram Jam episode. Oh, and do you have anything to plug?
Not particularly. I mean, my books are at martinpopoff.com. Well, I suppose I do. I've got an audio podcast, History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff. We've got a YouTube channel, The Contrarians. But the books, the current one that's doing well is the brand new Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon 50th anniversary book. So I'm mailing a bunch of those today. So that's just brand new out. And I do have the Priest books. So I do have, these 2 Priest books.
And how about that hardcover one?
That go together. And the hardcover, the big, full color throughout, massive timeline one, 400 pictures one, and martinpopoff.com for all that.
Right on. All right. So check out Martin's books. I'm going to order that hardcover Priest today. I really do need that. All right, Martin. Thank you so much. Till next time, Schmack-a-Magob.